So, after interviewing probably hundreds of progressive congressional candidates over the 10 years that I've now been doing this show, just a small handful actually went on to win their Democratic Party primaries, and an even smaller number actually made it to Congress. So, naturally, over time, I got extremely demoralized and felt like it was wrong of me to keep asking my viewers to give their hard-earned money to congressional candidates that had a very small chance of success. Furthermore, it felt irresponsible to get people's hopes up about change that would never come to fruition, because after a while, defeat upon defeat upon defeat, it takes its toll, and inevitably it fosters cynicism. It did in me. So I stopped interviewing congressional candidates because, quite frankly, it felt pointless and arguably counterproductive. With that being said, Zohran Mamdani proved that there is finally an appetite for change among the Democratic Party's base. Now, whether or not other candidates can replicate what he did remains to be seen, but if it can be done, I think there are candidates in this cycle that can do it. And I want to talk about them because I think they have a good chance of getting it done. It's a small chance. Nonetheless, it's a chance. And it's important to talk about them now because I do believe we finally have a window of opportunity thanks to the dissatisfaction that people have with the Democratic Party establishment. So without further ado, here's some candidates that I am cautiously optimistic about. The first is Donavan McKinney. He currently serves as a state representative in Michigan's legislature, and he is currently competing in a Democratic Party primary against Sri Thanadar, a millionaire and progressive turncoat who renounced his DSA membership. And as AIPAC Tracker explains, when Sri Thanadar was a state representative in Michigan, he co-sponsored a resolution calling on Congress to halt military aid to Israel, referring to it as an apartheid state. The following year, when he ran for Congress, he faced opposition from AIPAC for supporting this resolution, so he started pushing more pro-Israel stances. By 2023, he was traveling to Israel on an AIPAC-sponsored trip, and in 2024, he is an AIPAC-endorsed candidate. So Sri Thanadar is a complete sellout. And he's arguably Detroit's John Fetterman, and Donavan McKinney has a unique opportunity here to oust him since he's officially out of step with the Democratic Party's base on a major issue, which is the genocide in Gaza. And to show you how out of step he is, Harry Anten of CNN just released a really interesting video talking about this seismic shift on Israel-Palestine among Democratic Party voters. And because of this, I'm confident that this is now an issue that Democratic candidates should dive into. Just lean into it because now the Democratic Party's base has your back.
Andrew Cuomo, during the primary, attacked Mamdani as being insufficiently pro-Israel. I'm not quite sure the former governor understood how much the politics have changed around this issue among Democrats. What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats sympathize more with, Israelis or Palestinians? In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh, my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years. So all of a sudden, it's the pro-Palestinian position that actually reigns supreme in Democratic politics, not the Israeli position. And that is part of the reason why Mamdani was able to do so well in this primary, because those attacks over Israel, simply put, did not ring true for Democrats. They're now on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis.
I mean, this is a much bigger issue, specifically with Mamdani, though. I mean, an outspoken critic of Israel. He's facing continued criticism, though, for not being outspoken enough against anti-Semitism, that is for sure. But on this, talk about Democrats and how broadly how this really is shifting.
Yeah. So, you see this among Democrats overall, right? But we know that Mamdani's base was younger voters within the Democratic Party. And so I want to break it down
with younger Democrats.
Correct. So take a look here. Who age 18 to 49 Democrats sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Again, in 2017, younger Democrats sympathized more with the Israelis by 14 points. Look at this shift now. Palestinians, they sympathize more with the Palestinians by 57 points. That is an over 70-point shift in the margin in just a matter of 8 years. So the bottom line is, Mamdani's base within the Democratic Party and the base of the Democratic Party of younger voters, younger Democrats, have changed tremendously on this issue in 8 years' time. I rarely ever see shifts like this, Kate, in which you see one side of the equation leading by 14 points 8 years ago, and then all of a sudden the other side of the equation leading by 57 points. The bottom line is the politics around The Israelis and the Palestinians have shifted tremendously among Democrats, and they've shifted specifically tremendously among Democrats who are under the age of 50, younger Democrats who are Mamdani's base, and also the base of Democratic socialists like himself, like Bernie Sanders, like AOC. They have just shifted more so than I think that anyone could possibly have imagined, say, 8 years ago.
In other words, being anti-Israel is officially good politics if you're a Democrat. Zohran Mamdani proved that these polls are not some sort of wishful thinking. He proved that you can be anti-Israel, you can criticize them, and despite all of the attacks that the establishment will try to throw at you, it's not going to resonate with voters who see through the bullshit. I mean, Kirsten Gillibrand just had to apologize to Zohran Mamdani for her racist tirade. When has that happened? So, I mean, suffice to say, the game has changed. We're playing with a new set of rules, and the Democrats who don't adapt are going to get left behind. I think that Sri Thanadar could be somebody that we could make an example out of. Now, does this mean that AIPAC won't get involved to stop Donavan McKinney? Of course not. But as Zohran taught us, an organic grassroots movement can overcome big money. It's difficult, but it can be done. And right now, Donavan does have a lot of momentum. He's already been endorsed by Bernie Sanders and Rashida Tlaib, and he has a robust policy platform supporting Medicare for all, housing for all, just to give you a couple of examples. And he's also the only candidate endorsed by Justice Democrats in a very long time. They really scaled back their operation and prioritized challenging more vulnerable incumbents. So the fact that they're backing McKinney here indicates that they do think that he has a chance of pulling off an upset against Thanadar here. Now, to be clear, he hasn't, to my knowledge, said anything specifically about Israel, but McKinney is primarily running on local issues, which he should be, but he alludes to wanting to cut off funding for weapons to countries like Israel that commit war crimes. But he doesn't name them explicitly. I think that he may be treading carefully here to avoid the wrath of AIPAC, which is fine, but I don't think candidates should be afraid to be explicit about their positions now that the dynamic has completely flipped in this party. You are no longer playing defense if you oppose a genocide. You're on the defense for supporting a genocide. But that issue aside, I think that McKinney does need to step up his social media game because right now it's definitely lacking. But if he's making genuine connections with people in his community, he is a state representative after all, I think that that could make up for his online absence. Although creating buzz, I think it would definitely help in this day and age. But in the end, I think he'd make an amazing member of Congress who would be comparable to AOC and Rashida Tlaib, which would be a major improvement over a fraud like Sri Thanadar. And I think that he has a respectable chance of actually pulling off a win here. But let's move on to the next candidate. Next up is Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. Now, he ran for governor against Gretchen Whitmer a couple of years ago, but ultimately lost. And now he's running for the United States Senate. And I think that this is an amazing candidate. He is a literal medical doctor who wrote the book on Medicare for All. I'm not joking about that. I have it. He wrote a book on Medicare for All. So I have no doubt that he'd be a stalwart fighter for Medicare for All if he made it to the Senate. He also secured the endorsements of really prominent progressives like Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, and Keith Ellison, and he's building a larger social media following and exhibiting a level of energy comparable to Mamdani. Not quite there yet, but comparable. And I think that he is a really effective communicator. For example, here he is talking about the future of the Democratic Party.
Probably the oldest politician I know, 83 years old, Bernie Sanders. He's still lighting it up with young people. You know what advice he gave me when I ran the first time? He said, Abdul, and it's hilarious, because at that point he was probably like 74, 75. Never lose touch of the young people. And I was like, I'm 32. I am the young people. And but his point was, they'll show you what they need. And he was speaking a certain wisdom, which is to say, that oftentimes we assume that the world looks the same way it did when we were young, right? And things structurally have changed.
Okay, he gets an A+ for the Bernie Sanders impression. Now, as you can see, he has a personality, which is rare in Democratic Party politics. But there is one problem that I do want to address. There is another candidate in the race who a lot of people might perceive as a progressive option. State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who went viral a couple of years ago for her amazing speech condemning the Republican Party's attack on LGBTQ plus rights. And like Abdul, she's a very, very effective communicator. She has charisma. She's also building a lot of momentum for her campaign. So while I am worried that they could split votes and pave the way for a centrist, the clear choice in this race for the left is Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. without a doubt. Since one of the first things that Mallory McMorrow did was reach out to pro-Israel groups to underscore her support for Israel. And yeah, I'm sorry, but I have a zero tolerance policy for genocide supporting Democrats, and you should do. Not to mention, I genuinely don't know if she supports Medicare for all. She doesn't have a policy page, so I don't know what her policies are. So my policy litmus test is Medicare for all. That's the first thing that I look for. If I don't see it, I disregard the candidate. But then my moral litmus test is opposition to genocide. If I don't see that, I disregard the candidate. Dr. Abdul checks both of my boxes, my main litmus tests. And hands down, I think he is the best candidate in this race. But I think that he needs to quickly do things to differentiate himself from candidates like McMorrow, who could also be perceived as a progressive. With that being said, I do worry about his chances because this is a very crowded field in an open primary. But I think that he is on the right track and he's stepping up his social media game. And I hope that his chances will increase as more people hear from him. But he's a very good speaker who communicates his policies well, and because of that, I do have hope. Nonetheless, very, very cautiously optimistic here. Moving on, there is Saikat Chakrabarti, who's running against Nancy Pelosi in California's 11th district, and because he's challenging the queen of fundraising, he is automatically at a significant disadvantage. Having said that, this man is a progressive powerhouse himself. He worked for Bernie's 2016 campaign. He went on to co-found Justice Democrats with Kyle Kulinski and Cenk Uygur. He then went on to become AOC's chief of staff and was hated by the Democratic Party establishment in D.C. And he's taking an explicitly populist approach in his campaign against Pelosi, which is smart.
My name's Saikat Chakrabarti, and I'm running for Congress in San Francisco against Nancy Pelosi on an overwhelmingly popular platform. Everything I'm calling for has over 50% support across the country, and that includes banning members of Congress from owning or trading stocks. 86% of Americans, including 87% of Republicans, want to ban members of Congress from owning or trading stocks. And there's already bipartisan bills in Congress to do exactly that. Corruption like this makes it easy for someone like Donald Trump to come to power by promising to just tear down all the institutions. But of course, now that he's in power, he's proving to be the most corrupt politician we've ever seen. Banning members of Congress from owning or trading stocks is not just a matter of ethics. It's the way to restore trust in our government.
Good stuff. Now, he's also very vocal against Donald Trump and his corruption, and he's a good communicator as well, and I think overall a solid candidate. And he has the progressive bona fides to back it up. So this man knows what he's doing, which is why I'm confident that he has a chance of pulling this off, albeit a small chance, but a chance nonetheless. Having said that, I do want to offer some constructive criticism in the off chance he sees this video. I think that he needs to make more noise and he needs to do more to put himself out there, because as a terminally online nerd like myself, I was really excited to see that he announced this campaign, but then kind of forgot that he was running. And if you fall off of my radar, someone who often seeks out progressive congressional candidates, you need to put yourself out there more. I feel like I'm a very good gauge of how well you're doing if I forget about, your campaign. Second, I think that his website is complete ass, and this is a really big missed opportunity because Saikat doesn't even have a policy page on his website. Now, thankfully, I know that he supports Medicare for all and opposes genocide, but he shouldn't expect other people to know this because most people are not like me where they're terminally online and do this for a living. Oftentimes, my first impression of a candidate is their website, and the very first thing that I check is whether or not they support Medicare for all and oppose Israel's genocide in Gaza. So, if this wasn't Saikat, me not seeing a policy page would be me leaving and never coming back because, that right there is kind of a deal breaker. It shows that you're not as serious as you need to be about policy. But because this is Saikat we're talking about here, I'm not disregarding him, but I do think that he needs to get that policy page up immediately because people are seeing that. That's their first impression. And if they don't see an agenda, they're not just going to accept, okay, you're progressive, because we've had so many charlatans in the past. So you need to prove that you have the progressive bona fides that you do have and put that policy platform out there. Now, I'm being especially hard on Saikat because after seeing multiple candidates try and fail to oust Nancy Pelosi, even one of them getting into the top 2 with her, you've got to bring your A game because she is going to be very, very difficult to oust. But having said that, if anyone could do it, I think Saikat is the one that could pull it off. But as an outsider, it doesn't look like he's built a very robust organization as good of a candidate he is. Now, maybe I'm just misreading the situation here, but I think that a couple of changes that he makes could lead to him making a really serious run at this. He's just got to adapt. I'm not confident that he can get the job done right now, but I think with a few tweaks, he could pull this off. But needless to say, I will be watching this campaign very closely because now is the time to kick out these leaders like Pelosi who've held the party back. And I think this is a strong candidate that just needs to clean up the act a little bit and get it together. Now, there's also Elijah Manley running in Florida's 20th district. He has a very, very solid policy platform, including Medicare for all, canceling medical debt. He also explicitly calls for conditioning aid to Israel and doesn't take money from AIPAC. And this is a young Zoomer who would be a game changer in DC. And his social media game is on point, and unlike most Democrats, he knows how to shitpost, which I admire. In fact, I almost wrote off his entire campaign because he had a running joke about him being a DEI lead at the CIA, and then he carried out that joke for many years, talking about how Trump laid him off after he gutted the government DEI program, and I actually thought that this was real, and I was not going to support somebody who was part of the CIA, needless to say, regardless of how progressive they are. But then I saw that he posted that on April 1st, and then it clicked, and then there's other tweets of him saying he was joking. So, it's been a running joke for a while, and I appreciate a candidate who's not afraid to meme a little bit too close to the sun and have fun, although he did almost get burnt by memeing too close to the sun. With that being said, I think that he is going to have, admittedly, a very uphill battle. But thus far, he is the only challenger to the incumbent, Sheila Sherfilius McCormick, I think that's her name. And this person has to go. Here she is with two Republicans and Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's war criminal prime minister, wanted by the International Criminal Court. And this picture, by the way, was taken after Netanyahu was indicted by the ICC for war crimes. So I'm sorry, she needs to get the fuck out of Congress, and one by one, we've got to make sure that we cleanse the party of these genocide-supporting sociopaths. This is not something that we should tolerate ever again. So my two main litmus tests, Medicare for all and opposing genocide. She fails one of them. She co-sponsored Medicare for all. Great. But again, you failed my moral litmus test. If you can't oppose a genocide and you actually support the people doing the genocide, fuck you. I don't want you in Congress because I don't trust that you have the moral bandwidth to actually fight the health insurance industry when it comes to Medicare for all. I don't think that if you don't have the courage to stand up to a genocidal war criminal, you're not going to have the courage to stand up to these health insurance companies. I expect you to cave like that the minute there's pressure. So I don't think you actually support Medicare for all. So yeah, people like this, they've got to go and we've got to kick them out. Now, I do have one more candidate today that I want to talk about, and I saved the best for last. This is journalist turned congressional candidate Kat Abughazaleh, who is running in the 9th District of Illinois, and she is by far and away the best candidate this cycle, hands down. Nobody's policy platform is as robust. Nobody is as better at social media. Nobody is as unapologetic as her. And I would literally give my left nut to see her get elected to Congress. I would actually do that for this country that I hate, by the way. I would do that because that's how invested I am in this campaign. And she is such a good candidate because she understands negative partisanship and she uses it to her advantage. For example, she went viral on right-wing Twitter for flipping off bigots. And after getting dragged through the mud on Twitter, she put out one of the best responses I've ever seen from a candidate.
Yes, I did flip off some bigots for telling children they'd go to hell. And no, I'm not going to apologize. My name is Kat Abughazaleh. I'm running for Congress in the 9th District of Illinois, and as usual, the right is mad at me. That's because I gave the finger to a woman who was terrorizing kids. I think in their eyes, this qualifies as assault. A few weeks ago, I was at a local library to support families going to a drag queen story hour event. Hundreds of other people showed up to protect them from harassment. And when I say harassment, I mean harassment. Conservatives showed up and stood at the door to tell children and their families that they were going to hell and yelled about how God doesn't recognize their basic dignity. They were screaming at kids for wanting to hear a story. So when a woman started filming people, including children, calling them pedophiles and predators, I flipped her off and told her she should be ashamed of herself. And I'd do it again. I can't believe this is controversial now, but antagonizing 4-year-olds doesn't deserve to be met with respect. Just 10 years ago, we were all horrified by the actions of the Westboro Baptist Church. But as Trump and his cronies have normalized far-right extremism, it seems like many leaders, including Democrats, feel as if they have to justify blatant hate as a legitimate political opinion, as if decorum is more important than people's rights. It is not. And the same people who are mad at me for being uncouth are the same ones who have called for me to be jailed, who have said I am trying to make Chicago Palestine, and who write weirdly horny op-eds about me, even though I'm supposedly a social contagion. One of those accounts is a Republican running for Congress, not even in my district. But that didn't stop her from writing an entire op-ed calling me a radical Palestinian ideologue in influencer clothing. She was mad that apparently I won't listen to moderates and independents unless they fall in line with my dogma. That dogma being, once again, basic human rights.
I mean, how could you not love her? She's basically the political equivalent of Android 19 from Dragon Ball Z, who absorbs their attacks and becomes more powerful as a result. To show you what I mean, Laura Loomer posted this about her following Mamdani's win, saying this is another communist candidate running for Congress in Illinois. If DSA had their way, Congress would be full of jihadists and wannabe hookers who want to seize all means of production. So, Kat is facing anti-Palestinian racism and slut-shaming, but she responded with a simple lamau and used it as an opportunity to fundraise, writing, "Support your local wannabe hooker by donating to my congressional campaign." And that, my friends, again, is how it's done. If you are being ignored by the right, that is a sign that your campaign isn't gaining enough traction. But if they are fear-mongering about you, you are very clearly doing something right. And she is, because she released internal polling showing that she is within striking distance of victory. She's just 7 points behind the candidate in first place, and she's ahead of 5 career politicians who are also running. Now, my fear is that if she gains enough support, the remaining candidates could drop out and coalesce behind Daniel Biss in the same way that the centrist Democrats dropped out and coalesced around Biden to stop Bernie Sanders back in 2020. But putting aside that fear, I think that she is laying the groundwork to build a coalition as robust as Zohran Mamdani. And like AOC, she's already making headlines in mainstream press and building notoriety through very high-profile interviews. So out of all of the candidates that I've talked about today, I think that she truly does have the best shot at pulling off an upset, which is good because she's basically the best candidate the left has had in years, with the exception of Zohran Mamdani. Like, you couldn't manufacture a better candidate in a lab. She's charismatic, she's hilarious, she's substantive, she's creating a national profile for herself already, and if she keeps this up, I think she's going to pull off a victory, which would be almost as monumental as Mamdani's victory in New York City. And I say almost because taking down a political dynasty is no small feat, but if she won here, this would be a huge thing for the left. So, in conclusion, these 5 candidates give me a tremendous amount of hope, not only because they're good candidates, but because I think that they have what it takes to actually pull off a win. Am I being a little bit naive? Probably. But Zohran Mamdani's victory has given me something that I haven't felt for years. Hope. And it feels good. So I'm going to hang on to this feeling for as long as I can, knowing that it's possible that my hopes and dreams are probably going to be dashed once again. Regardless if that happens or not, though, now is as good of a time as ever to push these candidates forward, since the Democratic Party base finally does seem to be on our side on the left. So I think we owe it to ourselves to be at least cautiously optimistic about these candidates.